Across the sprawling, bureaucratic tapestry of the Galactic Consortium, the Sol system held a peculiar status. Officially designated Preserve World 734 Alpha, it was more commonly known by the slightly dismissive nicknames whispered in the smoky cantinas of fringe worlds and the sterile halls of trade regulation offices. The Keeper's Playground, or sometimes, more gently, the Nursery. Administrator Plenex, a being whose gelatinous form quivered slightly with the stress of managing Sector 94 tariffs, often fielded inquiries about it. Access is restricted under Accord 7, subsection Gamma, he would drone, consulting his ever-present data pad. Quarantine maintained by entities unspecified. Purpose, debated. Debated was an understatement. For centuries, the prevailing theory, accepted with varying degrees of skepticism, involved the Keepers. These were believed to be an immensely powerful, ancient, and reclusive race, possibly non-corporeal, who had drawn an invisible line around the star Sol and its planets. Why? Theories abounded. Perhaps they were benevolent guardians, shielding the system's dominant species, the humans, from the harsh realities and dangers of the wider galaxy. Or maybe, as darker whispers suggested, the Keepers weren't protecting humanity, but protecting the galaxy from humanity, a species noted in the few fragmented, pre-quarantine observations as being unpredictably volatile and aggressively innovative. A third, more academic theory proposed it was simply a long-term sociological study, a cosmic ant farm left undisturbed. Evidence for the Keepers was thin but persistent. Strange, localized energy fluctuations reported by probes venturing too close to the Oort cloud boundary. The unsettlingly complete disappearance of at least 3 exploratory vessels that had arrogantly ignored the consortium advisories over the centuries. And perhaps most convincingly, the fact that the humans themselves had never emerged. Scans, filtered through the supposed quarantine interference, suggested a civilization hovering around early warp capability, perhaps dabbling in fission rockets and primitive orbital stations. They seemed content, blissfully unaware of the vast galactic civilization teeming just beyond their stellar doorstep, like children playing in a walled garden, tended by unseen, silent guardians. This galactic consensus meant little to Captain Vorlag of the pirate vessel Star Vulture. Vorlag, a grok, thick, scaly hide the color of dried mud, powerful reptilian limbs, and eyes that glinted with predatory cunning, spat a globule of acidic saliva onto the grimy deck of his bridge. Keeper myths, he snarled, his voice a gravelly rasp. Spacer superstitions, cowards' tales to explain away weak navigation and engine failures. His fleet, the self-styled Crimson Reavers, was in a desperate state. Once feared across half a dozen sectors, they were now limping through the void, hulls scarred, energy reserves dwindling, pursued relentlessly by consortium sector patrol cruisers after a particularly messy and unprofitable raid on a Xantusian or freighter near the Orion Spur. Vorlag needed a miracle, a soft target, undefended, overflowing with resources, and far, far away from the established patrol routes. His gaze fell upon the flickering star map, specifically on the dim, quarantined point labeled PW734 Alpha. Earth, the Keeper's playground. A grin stretched Vorlag's lipless mouth, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. There, he hissed, there is our prize. His first mate, a spindly, multi-limbed creature named Zix, nervously wrung its manipulator appendages. Captain, Zix chittered, its voice thin with anxiety. The Keepers, the quarantine zone, no ship that enters has ever returned. The legends. Legends. Vorlag slammed a heavy fist onto the command console, making Zix flinch violently. Manufactured by the consortium to keep independent operators like us away from untapped resources. Or maybe there was some ancient automated defense grid, now decayed and useless after centuries. What are we going to find down there, Zix? Mud huts, humans waving sharp sticks. He laughed, a harsh, grating sound. They're pre-warp primitives. We jump in, smash their little orbital toys, siphon their planetary resources, fuel, water, metals, maybe even some biologicals for the exotic markets. And we are gone before any mythical keeper even notices we scratched their precious fence. He lowered his voice, leaning closer to Zix. Imagine the plunder, Zix. An entire world, untouched by galactic commerce, ripe for the taking. Enough to refit the fleet, bribe officials, disappear into the outer rim nebula like kings. The promise of riches and the sheer force of Vorlag's conviction silenced most of the murmuring dissent on the bridge. Fear warred with greed, and for pirates, greed usually won. Vorlag straightened, puffing out his thick chest. "Set course for the nursery," he commanded, the grin returning. "The Crimson Reavers are about to teach these keepers a lesson about leaving valuables unattended." The Crimson Reavers, a motley collection of 6 heavily modified, brutally functional warships, slid through the interstellar void towards the Sol system. Vorlag maintained a tense vigilance as they approached the theoretical boundary of the Keeper quarantine, the scattered, icy debris field of the Uat cloud. He kept sensors on maximum gain, searching for any sign of the legendary energy fields or Guardian fleets. Nothing. Just the cold, silent drift of cometary bodies. "Status," Vorlag growled at his sensor operator, a squat alien submerged in a murky environmental tank. "Entering Uat cloud boundary, nominal background radiation. No unusual energy signatures detected, Captain," gurgled the operator. Vorlag allowed himself a smug grunt. "Told you, ghost stories." As they navigated deeper, past the orbits of the outer gas giants, colossal spheres of swirling hydrogen and helium that dwarfed their warships, minor anomalies began to register. Sensor ghosts flickered at the edge of detection range, vanishing before they could be resolved. Ships reported momentary, inexplicable course deviations, quickly corrected by their navigation computers. Strange, static bursts plagued calm channels. "Likely just system interference," Vorlag announced loudly, projecting confidence he didn't entirely feel. "Gravitational eddies from the gas giants, solar flare activity, standard phenomena for an uncharted system." Yet he saw the nervous glances exchanged between crew members, the way Zix kept polishing its optical sensors obsessively. The silence felt watchful. They pushed onward, crossing the orbit of Jupiter, then Mars. The inner system beckoned. Scans of Earth became clearer. A technologically active world, yes. Cities blazed with light. Orbital infrastructure was present, satellites, a few larger structures that might be space stations, but nothing emitting the energy signatures of planetary defense shields or heavy weapon emplacements common to even moderately developed interstellar powers. "Barely tickling space," Vorlag muttered, his earlier arrogance returning full force. "They haven't even mastered gravity plating properly on those stations." The asteroid belt loomed, a dense field of rock and ice. They navigated through it carefully, their ships weaving between tumbling mountains of stone. Still no sign of the keepers. No warning shots, no hails, no vast alien dreadnoughts decloaking from the void. Vorlag's chest swelled. He felt vindicated, brilliant. The legends were lies. The keepers were a myth. Earth was defenseless. "All ships," Vorlag broadcast across the fleet channel, his voice booming with triumph, "prepare for final jump to high Earth orbit. Weapons hot. Prepare landing parties. Let's show these primitives how the Crimson Reavers collect their tithes." He even added, unable to resist a final taunt into the void. Come out, little keepers. Vorlag has come to play in your precious nursery." The 6 pirate vessels of the Crimson Reavers dropped out of warp with agonizing precision, materializing in high Earth orbit like predators descending upon unsuspecting prey. Below them, the planet unfurled, a breathtaking sphere of swirling white clouds, deep blue oceans, and continents painted in greens and browns. Cities glittered like scattered diamonds on the night side. Vorlag surveyed it on his main view screen, a rapacious gleam in his eyes. Primitive beauty, ripe for spoiling. "Launch first wave," he commanded. "Target major energy signatures and atmospheric processing plants first. Standard resource extraction protocols. Minimal resistance expected." From the bellies of the pirate cruisers, scores of smaller craft detached, heavily armed atmospheric fighters and bulky landing barges, angling down towards the inviting blue atmosphere. Their pilots were lax, anticipating little more than perhaps potshots from chemically propelled rockets. They didn't even make it to the upper atmosphere. Suddenly, the space around the descending craft erupted. Not with energy beams or explosions, but with motion. From orbital platforms, Vorlag's sensors had dismissed as civilian infrastructure, from hidden launch sites on the stark grey moon, from seemingly empty points in space. Tens of thousands of small, incredibly fast objects converged. They were like a metallic blizzard, each object no larger than a Grok fist, accelerating at impossible velocities. Kinetic impactors. Dumb lumps of metal, Vorlag initially thought, easily dodged. He was wrong. They weren't dumb. They adjusted course mid-flight, tracking the pirate craft with uncanny precision, moving like a coordinated swarm of angry hornets. This wasn't a defense screen. It was a targeted AI-driven shredder. The lightly armored landers and fighters never stood a chance. Hull breaches, explosive decompressions, tumbling wreckage. The first wave was annihilated in less than 90 seconds, torn apart by what seemed like weaponized gravel. Vorlag stared, his jaw slack. What? What was that? Before anyone on his bridge could answer, the second surprise hit. From behind them, emerging from the concealing clutter of the asteroid belt they had so recently traversed, from hidden launch bays concealed on the red plains of Mars, even rising from innocuous-looking cargo haulers moving in leisurely orbits below the pirate fleet, came the drones. Hundreds of them. Sleek, angular, varying wildly in size and configuration, they surged towards the Crimson Reavers with terrifying speed and suicidal aggression. These were not the clunky security bots used in backwater systems. They moved with a fluid lethality, employing complex swarm tactics that baffled the pirate gunners. Waves of drones focused fire on specific shield points, overwhelming them through sheer volume, while others executed daring, high-G maneuvers, flanking and attacking vulnerable engine arrays. Lasers, plasma bolts, meson beams, a bewildering variety of energy weapons lashed out, augmented by bursts of electronic warfare that scrambled targeting sensors and overloaded guidance systems. Report, Vorlag bellowed, shaking off his shark. Concentrate fire on those drones, all ships' defensive formations. But as the Reavers struggled to counter the swarm from space, the planet below them woke up. Massive energy signatures flared across the surface, from remote mountain ranges, from deep beneath the oceans, from areas that scans had shown as empty desert. Powerful particle beams, the kind usually mounted on capital ships, lanced upwards with pinpoint accuracy. Huge, magnetically accelerated slugs, glowing cherry red from atmospheric friction, slammed into pirate hulls with enough force to buckle meter-thick armor plating. Earth itself was bristling with heavy weaponry, seamlessly integrated into a planetary defense grid far beyond anything a pre-warp civilization should even conceive of, let alone build. The Crimson Reavers were caught in a three-dimensional kill box, shredded by kinetic impactors from above, swarmed by hyperagile combat drones from all sides, and hammered by planetary defense batteries from below. Vorlag watched in numb horror as ship icons on his tactical display winked out, one after another. The Iron Maw vaporized by converging beams. The Void Ripper, crippled by drones, then finished off by a railgun slug that punched clean through its reactor core. Panic erupted on the Star Vulture's bridge. Alarms shrieked. Smoke filled the air. Crew members screamed reports of hull breaches, shield failures, weapon malfunctions. Through the chaos, Vorlag finally understood. His blood ran cold, a chilling sensation foreign to his reptilian physiology. There were no keepers, or if there were, they weren't needed. Humanity hadn't been coddled or confined. They had been left alone. Alone in their stellar playground, with their peculiar drives, their restless ingenuity, and apparently a terrifyingly advanced grasp of weapon theory untroubled by galactic norms or treaties. They hadn't built defenses to ward off the galaxy. They'd built them because they could, because it was interesting, because it was a challenge. This wasn't a defense grid. It was the galaxy's most over-engineered and lethal science fair project. The chaotic, almost playful way the drones moved, the sheer experimental overkill of the weapon systems. It wasn't warfare. It was pest control combined with field testing. A proximity alert screamed. A flight of small, needle-nosed drones zipped past the bridge viewport, impossibly close, waggling their maneuvering fins in what could only be described as a taunt before unleashing a volley of micromissiles that blew out a sensor array. Then, something new appeared on tactical, a cloud of shimmering particles drifting towards the star vulture. Sensors tagged it as inert dust, until it wasn't. Microscopic machines, self-replicating minds, began attaching themselves to the hull, burrowing inside, disabling systems node by node. Vorlag felt his ship dying beneath him, not from brute force, but from insidious, technological infestation. "This isn't a nursery," Zix shrieked, its voice breaking with terror, frantically trying to reroute power. "It's a death trap." Vorlag stared at the blue planet on the viewscreen, no longer seeing a prize, but a monument to a horrifying, alien form of genius. The playground keepers. The only keepers here were the humans, keeping their terrifying toys polished and ready. Crippled and bleeding atmosphere from a dozen wounds, the Star Vulture listed heavily, its engines sputtering erratically. Only two other ships from the Crimson Reavers remained, both heavily damaged, struggling to maintain orbit against the relentless, almost contemptuous pressure of the human defenses. "Retreat!" Vorlag screamed, his voice raw with desperation and fury. "Emergency jump! Now, get us out of here!" But escape vectors were systematically cut off. Kinetic impactor swarms herded them like sheep towards wading drone formations. Ground-based beams lanced out, disabling jump drives with surgical precision. The humans weren't just destroying them, they were containing them, dissecting them. Then a voice cut through the cacophony on all pirate frequencies. It was calm, devoid of emotion, speaking flawless Grok standard trade language. "Unidentified belligerent vessels, you have entered the sole restricted military testing and defense zone. Your hostile actions and weapons discharge have been logged. Cease all resistance immediately. Power down your primary drive systems and weapon arrays. Prepare to be boarded by deprocessing units. Failure to comply within 5 standard minutes will result in your complete energetic disassembly." The voice wasn't angry. It wasn't triumphant. It sounded bored, like a planetary administrator dictating pest control protocols, deprocessing units, energetic disassembly. Vorlag felt a wave of nausea wash over him. These weren't terms of surrender, they were terms of waste disposal. He stared at the image of Earth on his failing viewscreen. The beautiful blue marble now seemed impossibly sinister, a silent testament to a species whose idea of home defense involved casual planetary annihilation capabilities and drones that mocked you before blowing you up. The Keeper's playground. He finally understood. It wasn't a place for keepers. It was a place that made you keep your distance. His ship shuddered as another internal system failed, succumbing to the micromines. Vorlag slumped in his command chair, the fight draining out of him, replaced by cold, reptilian dread. Somehow, miraculously, Vorlag's crippled flagship and one other heavily damaged Reaver vessel, the Gut Wrencher, managed to execute a desperate short-range blind jump. They materialized light hours away, engines screaming in protest, hulls barely holding together, leaving behind the silent, debris-strewn orbit of Earth and the fate of the rest of the Crimson Reavers. Their crews were shells of their former selves, traumatized, whispering about impossible weapons, and the chillingly calm voice that had promised their disassembly. The fragmented sensor logs and terrified eyewitness accounts they carried back to the pirate dens of the Outer Rim were initially met with disbelief, then with growing unease. Vorlag, stripped of his fleet and his reputation, became a pariah, his ravings about planet-killing toys and AI swarms from hell dismissed as the excuses of a failed captain. But the logs were analyzed. Other pirate crews, venturing near the Sol system's periphery out of morbid curiosity, reported anomalous sensor readings and unsettling energy signatures far beyond what any primitive race should possess. Eventually, whispers turned into reports, and reports found their way through back channels to the lumbering bureaucracy of the Galactic Consortium. Administrator Plenex found his workload suddenly tripled as urgent inquiries flooded in regarding Preserve World 734 Alpha. An emergency council session was convened. attended by high-level representatives from dozens of core worlds. The pirates' data, initially dismissed, was re-examined with chilling focus. The Preserve World designation was suspended immediately. Panic fluttered through the hallowed halls of the consortium. The Keeper theory collapsed overnight. Had the Keepers been a lie all along? Was humanity itself the isolating force, passively warning the galaxy away? Or, a more terrifying thought began to circulate. Were humans something the original Keepers had created or found, something so dangerous they had simply walled it off and wisely retreated? A new designation was unofficially adopted in hushed tones: Solitary Hazard Zone. The old nicknames were dropped, replaced by fearful new ones: the Dragon's Earth, the Skunkworks Star, the Place You Don't Poke. A chilling legend spread like wildfire through the galactic networks. Earth wasn't a nursery. It was a self-contained fortress where the natives, in splendid, terrifying isolation, had honed the art of destruction into a form of high science, perhaps even entertainment. The quarantine, real or imagined, wasn't a cage. It was a warning label writ large across the stars. Humanity's status in the galactic consciousness transformed instantly from protected primitives to terrifyingly unknown variable. The galaxy abruptly realized it knew absolutely nothing about the true capabilities, intentions, or nature of the species residing in the Sol system. Cautious, almost supplicant, diplomatic overtures were drafted. The first official consortium, envoys to Earth, when they were eventually dispatched, would tread with unprecedented softness, carrying messages not of welcome to the galactic stage, but of profound, respectful inquiry. The playground was definitely closed for visitors. The proving ground, however, had just put on a demonstration that the galaxy would not soon forget.